This episode of 6'5 Guys is brought to you by Defiance Machine, defying tradition with innovation. Our Bros Rifles, precision on another level. JC Steel Targets, the industry leader in quality AR-500 steel targets.
Hi, and welcome to 6'5 Guys. I'm Ed Mobley.
And I'm Steve Lawrence.
Now, Steve, you're getting set up for a new cartridge, 308.
New year, new cartridge, new season.
And one thing that folks ask us is like, okay, what would you do based on your cumulative experience? You know, where would you go next? Now, for something like 308, folks probably have something like
RCBS. In fact, these are the dies I've been using for a number of years. 308 Winchester, standard set of dies from RCBS, which is a good set of dies, but for competition and the brass that we're using, the Lapua brass,
right.
I wanted to make sure that that brass lasted consistently through the season and I wasn't giving up anything. So I thought, hey, let's take a look at some new dies and use what I would typically use for a match load.
Now, if you've got something like a non-bushing sizing die, be it RCBS, be it Lee, be it Forster, they're going to produce good ammo.
Yeah.
But they have to take into account for something like 308, right? Mm-hmm. Whether it's Winchester brass versus Lapua.
All those different brands.
Dramatic differences in brass thickness. So something like an RCBS die is going to have to resize that neck down to accommodate.
It's going to get blown back out.
The lowest common denominator.
Yeah.
So it'll still produce good ammunition, but it may induce more wear and tear on your brass.
Yeah, and I like the fact, you know, when I looked at other choices that I use, you know, so, you know, my standby that I go to for competition shooting are the Redding Type S full-length sizing die.
Correct, and that's what
we'll get through the details in a second. And then a competition cedar, whether it be the Redding, which I like, or Forster, which I think we both use for 6.547 is the Forster benchmark or competition cedar.
Correct. So there are a couple of different ways you can go. So for example, you could buy a Redding die set where you get the Type S bushing die, okay, and of course you would select a bushing either from Redding, or we did a weekly gear update on another company.
Yeah, Custom Reload Incorporated.
That did some innovating things with the bushings.
For you guys that aren't familiar with the Redding Type S full-length sizing dies, they don't come with the neck bushing. So you'll need to size appropriately for the brass you're using and then get the appropriate bushing for it.
And their rule of thumb is, you know, take a loaded cartridge, measure it, and subtract 1.5 to 2 thou.
Yeah.
And that's the bushing you'll want. And then you've got a couple of options. If you buy the kit, you can use the Redding competition cedar, which is a really good die. But they'll tell you on their website that they do not support the use of this die for compressed loads.
Yeah, versus a similar cedar from Forster. Again, it has a lot of the same functionality in terms of the floating design here, but you won't void your warranty by using a compressed load with the seating die.
Right, and what I like about Forster is, you know, the display. You know,
if you're visually challenged,
like I am, you know, as far my aging eyes, and the fact that they'll even customize seating stems and for you. So, you know, the way that I'll typically roll is, you know, if I'm starting with a new cartridge, is I'll get the Redding, Type S bushing die, because that's kind of the industry standard.
Yep.
And then I'll get the Forster seating die.
Yep.
That's sort of the combination that I roll with.
Now, since we're shooting 308 and the likelihood of having a compressed load is low, if not negligible, I am going to use the Redding seating die.
And nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
In fact, I have used Forester, and I have some of these types of cedars on a couple of their dies. And actually, I really love this design, so that's what I'm going with here.
Yeah, and in my case, I just so happen to have this identical die set, and because I already had the Redding cedar, and since it's not going to be a compressed load, I'll go with this. But if I were to start from scratch, had I not had this sitting on the shelf,
Go with the Forester?
Yeah, I would have gone with the Forester cedar. Now, the next question is you get this, and what are sort of the tweaks and so forth that you would normally do.
One is the rubber O-ring, right?
Yeah,
for the float. You want that float.
The rubber O-ring, and so here are the tool heads from my Dillon. So I'll do a rubber O-ring here underneath the cedar.
For the guys that may not be familiar with some of the other videos, explain the O-ring. Why do you use the O-ring?
Well, what it does, and I also have it here under the mandrel as well as the sizer, does a couple of things. It induces float, as you mentioned, but also particularly for the sizing die, if you need to make
minute adjustments,
you can do that within almost a quarter turn before you have to loosen the lock ring and change it.
Yeah.
And that's particularly useful with the sizing die because each lot of brass can be slightly different, and it's just nice to be able to tweak it, a thou one way or the other.
Absolutely.
Without having to back it out.
And you do the exact same thing I noticed on your tool head. It's the same thing I do, which is you have an index mark, right? With you've made with a Sharpie, so you know at what point you had it set, and then you can adjust.
Don't touch that.
You can adjust it.
Don't touch
left
that.
or right.
And and we have a video on that on the resizing die setup. And another thing that you want to do as well with the Redding sizing die, and I'll just mention it briefly, we go into more detail in our video, is you also want to put an O-ring under here. Because what'll happen is it just comes loose.
It does.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so the O-ring prevents that. So what else do you want to do with that die? So we've gone to a mandrel, right?
Yeah.
So what you want to do is
take out the expander button.
Take out the expander button, and then you just you take out this decapper, because what you're going to do is you're just going to use a Lee. Again, I work on a progressive. If you're on a single stage, you probably still want to do decapping, but you just replace it with this so that it's not actually expanding. But I've done some tests, and when you decap with the sizing die, because some flash holes are not perfect, it'll tweak that stem a little bit.
Yeah.
And because that stem is what the bushing also rides on.
Now you've introduced
some
concentricity issues.
Right. So I just noticed that if you decap with a sizing die, you get more run out versus decapping. What I'll do is I'll this Lee Universal Decapper, I'll put it here right before the sizing die. Again, you can look at our progressive reloading video.
I actually decap as a separate step when I do my brass prep. So, again,
highly recommend.
Your mileage may vary, your practices may vary. One way is not right or wrong. It's just a matter of how much time you want to save.
So you've got those optimizations. We'd highly recommend again that you get a mandrel like the Sinclair mandrel. So what you would do is you would size down. You would size with the bushing, and then you would use the mandrel versus the expander ball to get you back up to the requisite.
That's right.
Neck tension. What's a next step, and what are we going, or what am I going to experiment with next? And so one of the things you can do with Forester is once you've settled on a bushing size, for like $10 or $15. You can send their full-length die, and they'll basically hone it out
to your specs.
To your spec, and based on tests that I've conducted, and even Redding talks about this on their website. You'll get a little more run out using a bushing die versus a non-bushing die. So this is going to be my next step is I'm just going to get this honed out.
And the cost of doing that?
10 or 15 bucks.
Okay.
And so then once I get this honed out, I would use this Forester non-bushing die in lieu of the Redding sizing die. Now, is it necessary for the sport we're doing? No, but I just like
for $15, it can only help.
Well, again,
Yeah.
it's an incremental improvement. And
Yeah.
then finally, one last thing that I like to do is I'm not a big fan of the Redding lock rings.
Yeah, the Forester ones really are nice.
Yeah, so I have a whole bag of this Forester
The reason
rings.
why is you have this cross bolt design versus one that just kind of impinges directly onto
and sometimes it holds and sometimes it doesn't. So one of the first things I do is I've got a whole collection of these if anybody's interested, and I just replace them with the Forester lock rings. Again, it's a tweak, a slight optimization, but as we've seen, just small cumulative beneficial changes. In the aggregate, you end up producing some really good ammo.
Yeah. So let's quickly summarize. Nothing wrong with a standard full-length sizing and seating set. It gets you on target. You would probably overwork the brass in this case versus having something custom like the Type S full-length sizing die. Seating, the competition seaters is a real nice upgrade, a little bit more expensive, but you can increment the seating by 1/1000th of an inch.
That's what's nice. I mean, again, this will do the seating for you, but again, you don't, as far as getting back to like a reference setting, you're kind of doing it.
It doesn't
by
have
trial.
the floating design, so you may have concentricity or run out issues.
But if you're getting into the sport and you already have this,
use what you got.
Use what you got and spend your money elsewhere before you start, doing some of this stuff.
Yeah. Secondarily, once you have a good set of dies, a nice upgrade is the O-ring, the rubber O-rings.
Yeah. Go to Ace Hardware.
Very minimal cost to do that.
7/8 inner diameter O-ring. They're available in the plumbing section.
Yeah. And then the fourth point is the mandrel. The mandrel die from Sinclair.
Yeah, and Scott Satterley, turned us on to that. And honestly, my 6.5 by 47, I went from typical 5-foot SD to now when I'll go out, sometimes I'll get 2 or 3. So again, just a small little improvement. Just little things here and there make a big difference.
Excellent. Good. Hope you guys found this informative and interesting. If we'll have more detailed write-up on the website, and be sure to check that out. And if you like the video, be sure to share it out with your friends and give it a thumbs up on YouTube.
Remember, folks, life's an adventure.
Stay on target.